Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that if you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. Mr. Fields, prior to our meeting, circulated the minutes to our previous meeting. Have the commission members had a chance to review those minutes?
Yes, we have.
Is there a motion regarding approval?
Move approval. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Fields, it's brought to my attention that Mr. Tim Springer with MNAA has requested that his...
I apologize. Doug at Yellow Cab.
excuse me. Doug with Yellow Cab has requested that an item on the agenda be moved up as a courtesy, and we're going to grant that. We're going to take up first for today a review of a complaint against Hamza Mukhtar from Tim Springer. Mr. Fields.
Yes. The airport routinely shares with us information that if there's any misconduct or violations of their rules at the airport, some of them are their rules that we actually have no authority over. Others do involve rules that we have responsibility for. On October 22nd, there's an allegation that Mr. Mukhtar refused a short run. For that at the airport, he was suspended from the airport for 30 days. In fact, he continues to be suspended, I think, until Sunday at the airport. However, because of the nature of this and the fact that we have a witness, many times we don't have a witness, we felt like you probably needed to see it. So we notified Mr. Mukhtar, the company, as well as the airport, and asked for them to appear.
Mr. Fields, I know you said Mr. Springer's here. Is Mr. Mukhtar here?
Yes, as well as representative from Yellow Cab.
I guess we'll hear from Mr. Springer first.
Yes.
Mr. Springer? Good afternoon.
My name is Tim Springer. I'm the general manager for Elite Parking Services. We run the taxi stop at the Nashville International Airport. On the afternoon of November 22nd, I was at the podium where we start the taxis at. Yellow cab number 5 came up. We put a customer into the cab and shut the door. That constitutes a fare at that point. We started to load the next customer. All of a sudden, the door came open. A lady stepped out, angry. We asked her what was wrong. She said, he's refusing to take me. Got out of the cab, started walking out of the terminal to where the hotel shuttles were. I immediately went over to taxi operations for the airport to notify them that we had a cab that refused a fare. Terry with the airport authority went over, talked to the person who was in the cab, said that she was only going to an airport hotel. The driver told him that there's shuttles for that. You need to take one of those.
All right. Any questions, commissioners?
You meant October 22nd, right?
October 22nd.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's
All right.
no
Oh, we're on time machine.
I'm sorry.
Any other questions for Mr. Springer?
Did you talk to the cab driver at all?
No, sir. They gave him another fare while I was walking over to the operation, so I never got a chance to talk to the driver. I just noted what cab it was, what company it was.
Thank you.
Mr. Mukhtar? Hello. If you'd please introduce yourself for the record.
Yes, I'm Hamza Mukhtar. I want to defense by myself. I'm sorry for everybody to call and everybody. My language is not fluent, but I want to explain 4 points to defense myself.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and once this woman he ride with me, the fare he go to Hyatt Plus hotel. Is it the fare he cost like 14, maybe $15, and most of fare like 25 if you go to from airport to downtown, and maybe after a tip he give me $20 and $20 and 25. This fare is not short to me. And I drive a cab, I take everyone, the short run or far away run. And this run is not short to me, and I'm not refuse anybody. This is the first thing. The second thing, the many passenger, when you ride with me, he asked me about shuttle. You have a shuttle? You have a shuttle, you're going downtown? Some passenger, he go and take the shuttle to go to downtown. And most of the fare is a good run to downtown. And many people, he go and take the shuttle to downtown. Everybody like to go free. The shuttle from airport to this hotel is a free. I told this woman, this lady, this is short, this is a fair, you have a shuttle here. Yes, I want to explain to this lady. And sometimes the people he ride with me, he don't know where you go exactly. Sometimes he take a far away way to take his place. But I tell him because I know the city. And the third thing, I asked the court, if this lady, he go to Hyatt Palace, not by airport, you go to Hyatt Palace by Brentwood. If this court is coming to me and punish me or not. And the fourth thing, my language is not fluent. I'm new immigrant in this country, and sometimes when I said something, maybe I'm not choice a good word to explain what I needed and what I want to talk to this lady. And sometimes the people he take a different meaning, but in this time I want to explain to this lady, you have a shuttle here, and if you want to take it or not. That is it. That's all. The lady he go from my car, and the next one he come to me. He go to Nescom. It's a short run too. It's $20. That's all I know. I want to talk, and I know when I apologize if I make a mistake, but I don't know. I don't like to make a big mistake because I work as a cab driver. I wanna help the community and help the people, and if I make a mistake, I wanna apologize to court, and yeah, that's all I want to talk.
Thank you, Mr. Mukhtar. Any questions, commissioners?
This lady was going to the Hyatt place in Donaldson?
And by airport, it's not Donaldson. See, but it's a near airport.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mukhtar.
First, I'd like to appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys moving this up on the agenda. I do have a company emergency going on at the moment. When my drivers work the airport, I let them know that they choose to go in there. No one makes them. They have a 60-40, 50-50 chance of getting short runs or long runs, but they choose to work that area. I'm very strict about any of my drivers turning down short fares. They know this. there's no doubt in my mind that this man made a suggestion to a woman that they have a free shuttle going to the short runs up on Donaldson Pike. That's why I'm going to discipline him. He's already been disciplined by the airport for 30 days. That's very costly. When drivers stay in there for a couple hours and they get the short fares, I'm sure you guys are aware that it can be very frustrating to go up on Donaldson Pike. And refusal of the short runs are far too common, and it's probably commonplace for them to make suggestions that they are shuttles right across the breezeway going up on Donaldson Pike into the surrounding hotels. A lot of them make those suggestions, and there's no doubt in my mind that this man made a suggestion to the woman that they are free shuttles across the breezeway. I sort of have doubt that he flatly refused the run. He sort of convinced me he didn't flatly refuse it. However, I ask, the airport's already disciplined him for 30 days. Let me discipline him in-house. Give him 2 weeks off the street, and I will handle it in-house, I promise you. I don't really believe, from what he's told me and the way he's explained it to me, that he flatly refused to take the woman up on Donaldson Pike. But I have no doubt he suggested to her that there were free shuttles. And I don't want them doing that. I don't want any of my drivers picking and choosing the runs that they get when they go through that airport. They choose to go in there. I'm going to take care of him severely, and the airport already has. So I just leave the decision in you guys' hands now, and I suggest that, 2 weeks off the street for nothing, and I will handle that in-house. I've told this to Mr. Fields, and now I've laid it at your feet and go by what you guys decide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
2 weeks off the street means what?
It means that he's not able to drive a cab at all for 2 weeks,
Will it start after his suspension at the airport ends, or,
immediately. I'll take him off the street immediately.
because it looks like he's back on at the airport on November 23rd, according to this letter from the airport. So,
Right, he was given 30 days out of the airport.
Thank you. To me, I don't get to make a motion, but it does not appear there's much evidence against Mr. Mukhtar that he outright refused the fare. He came and he testified. Testified is not the right word, but he came and he spoke in the first person. It's not hearsay as to what occurred. I would think that the complaint should be dismissed against Mr. Mukhtar. That's my feelings.
Although he didn't necessarily attest to flat out refusing, he did make the suggestion that the lady take the shuttle. And as I understand it, the gentleman just said that it may be a common practice by a lot of other cabbies to make the suggestion that someone take the shuttle, especially when they know it's a short run. And I think that's an issue. And if that's a practice, I might recommend that instead of maybe taking him off the street for 2, I think it warrants, his testimony warrants some level of punishment, or I hate to say punishment, but some level of discipline. And I think if the airport is the issue, until he gets a better understanding of what the policy is at the airport, we might want to extend. I don't know if it's within our authority to extend his suspension from the airport for an additional 30 days.
We would not have the authority to extend that punishment because the airport has the authority of the airport. It would be the authority of the company to restrict him in and out of the airport if they chose to do that. In other words, the company is the contractor with the airport, and that allows the drivers access to the airport. They then have choices of what cars go in and out. That would be a potential repercussion of this if Mr. Trimble in yellow decided to do that.
We always abide by what the airport has always handed down. happily, and we work with them. We have a great relationship with them. Only reason I've never had the first problem out of this driver. He's been with me 3 or 4 years, and I go by their past history. Anytime they get a complaint, even if it's just a call in on the phones, I stick something in their file. And I can go back and I can look and say, this happened on this day, this happened, you had this complaint. This driver's not had any complaints. I mean, he's not had any downtown or in the zones. I've had no trouble with him. So
How long has he been with you?
he's probably, 5 years? 6?
Where?
How many years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 years.
3 years with Yellow Cab?
No, with 2 years in Yellow Cab.
Okay.
So you've been in Nashville.
Yes, 3 years in United States.
But as I say, I stick all complaints in their files. We don't discard anything. And I've not had any complaints on this gentleman. So I know there's disciplinary warranted to some extent, but I'm going by, his past things. And we abide by the airport. We work with them well. So
Mr. Trimble, your sanction would be in addition to the airport sanction, which is already wrapping up in a couple days, and
Yeah.
you would be 2 weeks totally off the street.
yeah, if that's what you guys choose, I would do that. I would abide by that. The airport's,
Well, that's what you suggested.
yeah. Because as I said, I'm totally honest with you. I keep everything in their file, and there's no doubt in my mind that he informed the lady that there was free shuttles going, up the street. I do have doubt to whether he really flatly refused the taking the lady. I just don't believe that happened like that.
What I have no doubt about, though, is that the lady in exiting the cab was upset. Mr. Springer told us today that it caught his attention, the
Right.
door opened, and she was visibly upset.
Right.
And that concerns me as to the impression we're making on someone who's arrived in our city at the airport, and they're meeting the cab drivers, and we've talked about this over and over here,
Right.
that these are our first ambassadors to Nashville. And I'm assuming he went through the Taxi Pro Hospitality Training Program,
Yeah.
which did not suggest that he should make suggestions that they could get a free ride somewhere else. Or at least I don't think the suggestion was met with great pleasure by this passenger.
I'm in agreement wholeheartedly.
Okay.
Wholeheartedly, I'm in agreement.
So something happened inside that
Exactly.
cab that made her upset, and she exited and went and sought somewhere else to get a ride.
I am in agreement wholeheartedly, but there's no bigger message, believe me, that we send to the drivers in this city than bar them from the airport for 30 days, which the airport did, and we work well for them. And when we take that from them, it catches all of them's attention. And if I give him an additional 2 weeks off the streets, that's a pretty good message.
It is.
It's pretty stout, but going by his record of no complaints up to this point anyway.
Chris Saunders with the airport, the Operation Landside Coordinator. Did you have a hearing in front of him as well?
Not pertaining to this.
Okay, they just unilaterally decided to revoke him for 30 days?
Correct.
And there's no complaints otherwise in his file at all?
I've not had anything.
Okay. Any compliments or?
Well, yeah, we don't have a tendency to stockpile them.
Well, sometimes someone finds property that belongs to somebody that was left in the cab, they return it, and you get a letter saying, we really appreciate this driver getting his
Because
property back to us.
I've had those, and I do put those in their file too, but I've not got anything in this gentleman's file, good or bad. So I've had no complaints. If y'all could be lenient with him and let me discipline him in-house, I promise you I will send a message to your liking, and I will handle this gentleman accordingly. The airport's already handed down their judgment on him, and if you guys will allow me to discipline him in-house, I will make sure this never happens again from this particular driver. I can't control every single driver until there's the caught and the uncaught, and when they get caught, then that's when we take action. So if you guys will let me discipline this gentleman in-house, I will take care of this matter.
Would you report to Mr. Fields what that will be?
Sure.
Okay.
In speaking, obviously I'm not speaking on behalf of the driver in terms of Yellow Cab. Yellow Cab historically has managed their drivers in this fashion. They're I wouldn't say take no prisoners, but they're pretty close to it. They do have a tendency to make sure they don't do it again, or they'll ask him to leave the company. If Mr. Trimble says he'll handle it, I have confidence he would handle it.
I have a very good reputation for being very strict and handling my problems in-house, so.
I would suspect if you handled it in-house, there'd be some deterrence to the other drivers to ever refuse a short ride or make a suggestion that they should take the free shuttle.
I promise you I'll send that message.
Thank you.
I do it monetarily and in other fashions as well. And any fines I hand down, I usually donate to charitable organizations. I got several ways of sending messages, and I do. So I ask that you guys let me handle this in-house, and I'll take care of it.
Suggest a motion that we not take action.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes to take no action regarding the complaint. And does it need to be dismissed, Ms. Costonis?
I don't think so. I think what you've just done is effective. I mean, it resolves the complaint. The due process really speaks to the notice that the driver is given in advance of any discipline being taken. And so since you all have chosen not to take any disciplinary action, I think that resolves the matter.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is under other passenger vehicles for hire. Thank you, Mr. Trimble. Thank you, Mr. Mukhtar. And thank you, Mr. Springer. Next item on our agenda under other passenger vehicles for hire, we've got a review of new company applications for other passenger vehicles for hire for several companies, Mr. Fields.
Mm-hmm. All of the company's applications are shared with you in advance. They're all in order and have met the qualifications, so I'd recommend that you approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes to approve the applications. Next, we have other passenger vehicle for hire driver applications. The first one is Mr. Lyons. Mr. Fields.
Mr. Lyons applied to be a driver. In his application, he failed to list two charges. One was a shoplifting in 1995, and the other was a 2002 capias that was listed. A capias, it's not really an arrest, but it's an issue that it's a notation, and I'm looking at lawyers here telling me that if I'm speaking correctly, it's a notation in the file that a warrant of sorts has been issued for them to appear. Is that?
Often a capias is issued if they fail to appear in court, so it's issued for them to be picked up and then so they make it to court.
Correct. Other than that, again, there's nothing that would prohibit him from being a driver other than he failed to report those things to us.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. Hello, Mr. Lyons.
Hi, James Lyons. I'm here on behalf of myself, actually. Those charges were so long ago, and there was a different me. And I just wanted to say that I haven't had an issue with drinking or anything in over 10 years. So I haven't touched a drink of alcohol or anything in well over 10 years. So that was an old chapter in my life, and I'm here today trying to start something new as far as driving. I've also been a driver of trucks, and I drive trucks, and that was just one of those things that I did back then during the gray area of my life, and I thank God that He's changed me now to where I'm moving forward. So I just ask that you grant the application to become a driver for our vehicles.
Commissioners, any questions?
Grand Avenue does not have a representative here, however, they've contacted us. Oh, he is? Oh, I'm sorry, he did. I'm sorry, he is here. I apologize, I do know you work for Grand Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Lyons. You do understand, had you had listed these issues on your original application, it's likely you would not be here before us today seeking to have your application approved, correct?
Yes, I did inform you of that, but it probably, like I said, that was a gray area, and I didn't remember those things.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Congratulations, Ms. Florence. Next, we've got Michael Thomas Meehan. Mr. Fields.
Mr. Meehan is present. He'll be coming forward. Mr. Meehan, as I reviewed his application, he revealed things that he needed to reveal. Unfortunately, as I reviewed the record, there were issues that I wanted to make sure that you were aware of. There were there was a domestic violence charge. There was also DUIs that were not recent, but were close enough that I was concerned about in terms of proximity to when they actually happened, and wanted to make sure that you were aware. In terms of the last several years, the last charge that we have was a 2010 charge, and it was a domestic assault. He was found guilty, and anyway, but he is present.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. Mr. Meehan?
Afternoon.
Afternoon. Would you like to make a statement?
That last thing that he was talking about, I was just wrestling around with my brother. That was the assault thing. And it got blown out of proportion.
And in his case, Metro Delivery has contacts. I apologize, I got a little confused on delivery. So they have contact. They're prepared to put him to work if you approve it.
You pled guilty to domestic assault, right?
Yeah, I don't like being in jail, so I just did anything I could. They said they would let me go that day if I pled guilty, so I did. I think I can probably have that reversed. My brother's probably willing to go to the courthouse. And
It looks like you served 5 days on that before you got to court.
I don't think it was that long.
They gave you credit for 5 days.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, and then put you on 11 months, 29 days probation. Is that a yes?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Did you get off the probation okay?
Yes.
Did you have to do domestic violence, battered intervention?
No, they
or
found out that it was just having an altercation with my brother, so they dropped that.
So what, you come up on the jail dock and just took it so you could get out of jail?
Yeah.
You couldn't make the bond?
I don't exactly remember about the bond.
You made bond on the DUI cases, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I probably didn't have very much money at that time. Just did the smartest thing that I could at the time.
You've got a 12-page record here out of just Davidson County.
Yeah, a lot of those things were dismissed, and I went for about 17 years on my second marriage with no tickets, no trouble, no nothing. And then I kind of got thrown off balance when I got taken out of my house, and a bunch of, just like a chain reaction of things went wrong and kind of happened to me.
Well, May of 2001, you got your first DUI, right?
Yeah, my long-term memory is not very great. I wish I would have known I could have pulled up my own report, and then I would have just rewritten it, because my long-term, I've been through so many traumatic things that memory and trauma kind of don't go together.
In fact, this was up in Judge Blackburn's courtroom in 2001, up in the
Yes, that
on the
one was
6th floor.
originally dismissed, and then they somehow redid it. But
It looks like you were indicted and you pled guilty to driving under the influence.
Yeah, but the first time it was dismissed.
Okay. You ended up pleading guilty to it, though, right?
Yes, I had to.
Had to. All right. Then about 2 years later, you pled guilty to another DUI, right?
Yes.
Okay. And in fact, you got charged with a DUI third offense, didn't you?
I believe so. That's what it says.
June of, actually the offense occurred March 5th, 2003, charged with driving under the influence, third offense.
All right.
And that was reduced to driving under the influence, second offense. And that one you got 11 months, 29 days to serve, right?
No, I never served any. You mean the 1129 in jail? No.
Yeah, with 100%?
Nope.
Your date of birth, March 2nd, 1962?
Yes. I've never spent a year in jail.
Okay. Remember being in front of Judge Fishburne?
I believe so, yes.
He's on the 5th floor. Okay. And you were told not to drink alcohol for 3 years as a condition of your probation?
If that's what it says, I'm not sure about that.
Did you comply with that?
I think I did.
You think you did?
Yes, I must have, because they didn't do anything else.
Do you drink now?
I don't drink and drive. I very rarely drink.
Have you ever been to a treatment program?
Many, many years ago, like 30 years ago or something like that.
What about
I've recently graduated from 2 different universities, Tennessee Technology Center and, ironically, Nashville Auto Diesel College. So this is the transportation committee, so that kind of goes in my favor. And like I said, I hadn't been in any trouble during the last 17 years until I got that divorce. That kind of threw me off balance and things started going wrong. I started getting arrested. And I haven't been in any trouble recently, and I've got a clean MVR.
in between the first DUI I was talking about and the time you were charged with DUI third offense, you pled guilty to another DUI on January 3rd in front of Judge Higgins, didn't you?
January 3rd of what year?
I'm sorry, January 30th of 2003 in the General Sessions Court in front of Judge Higgins.
11 years ago?
Sounds like it. And that's why you were charged with a third offense later in front of Judge Fishburne.
Right.
Okay.
Like I said, I didn't know I could pull up my own report. The reason I was rejected, they told me, was because I didn't write everything down because I couldn't remember it. But if I'd have known that I could pull up my own report, then I would have just rewritten it and we wouldn't be having this discussion. And on my original application, I did put on there any other tickets or arrests that I couldn't remember because I knew my long-term memory is not very good.
So there's actually 3 DUI convictions that you have. Were you drinking when you got arrested for the assault for wrestling with your brother?
He was, and I think I had something to drink, but not very much. We get along fine now.
Good.
I'm a pretty great driver. I recently delivered for 2 years straight for a delivery company, and I have no problems. No. So, pretty great driver.
How are you with people?
Hopefully pretty well. How am I doing?
I have no other questions.
Any other questions, Commissioners?
Do you drink now?
Very rarely. Certainly don't drink and drive anymore.
And this would be with Metro Livery?
Yes, sir.
Is it appropriate to ask for a periodic test?
That's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
You've got some other violations that you've disclosed, moving violations, the red light violation, failure to merge, some failure to wear a seatbelt. Were you working when you received those? Were you delivering?
I think the failure to merge one, yes, I was. I just got done making a delivery, and for some reason, a train or something caused some kind of problem, and I was distracted, and I was trying to text, I guess, that I was done with the delivery, and just didn't look ahead far enough.
Thank you, Mr. Meehan. You can have a seat while we deliberate.
All right, thank you.
Any commissioners have any further thoughts or considerations?
Mr. Fields, in reviewing the application, did you feel he revealed all the DUI convictions?
Yeah, it was my impression that there were 3 and that they were all convictions.
Because I was just looking at the application that I had here, and I only saw the one from February 7th, 2002.
And again,
I may have been missing something, but
when I saw the combination of issues on this, I knew that it was something that y'all would want to see.
I'm not really comfortable public safety-wise at this point from that conversation. I'd like to make the motion to deny.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Application for Mr. Meehan is denied. Next item on our agenda, we've got a review of a new driver application for Michael Meacham. Mr. Fields.
Mr. Meacham applied to be a taxi cab driver for Taxi USA. He has, the company has said they would hire him. He failed to disclose a 2005 two-charge driving on a suspended license and a light law charge. So I assume that would be running a red light. I don't know that he may could say more about that. But other than that, there was nothing that would prohibit him from being a driver except that he failed to disclose.
Hello, Mr. Meacham.
Hello.
Would you like to make a statement?
Yes, sir. On my initial application, I had put on there, to the best of my knowledge, that I had that arrest and that charge, and I put 2007 as the date, but I couldn't find any other information, so that was like the best guess I could make. So I failed the initial background check, and then they told me that it was in fact 2005. So I corrected it on my excuse me, my new application, and that's why I'm here now. But I believe what had happened is there was some type of violation I had that I didn't go to court for, which led to the failure to appear charge, and that led to the arrest. And I think I got pulled over, and that's when in 2005, and that's when they found that I in fact had the warrant for failure to appear. So it was just a case of simply not knowing. It's been, several years ago.
What was the, what were you to appear in court for?
It was, that was the light law, perhaps. It was some type of traffic violation. It was traffic court. I don't have my FBI report. Well, I may have it right here. Not sure though. But I believe it was a traffic violation. It wasn't any type of criminal, major crime, violence, or DUI or anything like that.
Commissioners, do we have any questions for Mr. Meacham?
No.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Is the person from Taxi USA or Allied, is he here?
They contacted me and said they would hire you.
Okay, all right. What is my next course of action from here? Just report to the TLC? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is under wrecker and towing services. We've got a request to review new driver application for Jeff Horner. Mr. Fields.
Mr. Horner, in his application, failed to list a 2011 charges of disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. The owner of the company he'd go to work for is here as present. He, if approved, he'll be going to work for Dad's Towing.
Thank you. Mr. Horner.
Yes, sir. That 2010 actually stems back to 2006. It was when my stepmother passed away. I was in a commercial vehicle and up at my dad's house, and I was illegally parked on the shoulder of the road. I noticed there was an officer in front of my truck. I noticed there was a car there, so I walked out. Me and my father walked out to meet him, and it was a Gallatin officer there. And she proceeded to tell me that, you need, we've got a call on it, so you need to move it or I'm going to have to issue a citation. And I'm like, that was fast. She goes, and she must have been in a bad mood, but she goes, like I said, you move it or I'll write you a ticket. And I done something completely stupid. I went to hand her my ink pen, and she took it totally the wrong way and grabbed my arm and shoved me up against the wrecker. And I had a Nextel phone in my hand. She goes, give me your other hand. And I'm asking her, what do I do with my phone? I didn't want to just drop it on the ground. So finally, I just said, the heck with it, and I dropped it. And I was arrested for that. And that stems from the disorderly conduct. It was a very exercising poor judgment that I wish, not because I'm standing right here, I wish I could go back and just keep my mouth shut and obey the officer.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Horner?
Did you plead guilty in court?
Yes, sir.
Did you have a lawyer?
No, sir. Well, I finally did. I obtained one. But at that time, I'd had no lawyer. I just pleaded guilty on my own.
What was the outcome, the sentence?
It was a monetary fine.
Okay.
It was...
no probation or anything?
No, sir.
No suspended sentence?
No, sir.
Just pay a fine?
Yes, sir.
What was the fine?
It was a total of a little over $500.
Okay.
Very expensive lesson in ignorance.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, guys.
Next item on our agenda, we've got a public hearing to consider legislation to regulate the commercial use of low-speed vehicles within certain portions of the metropolitan Nashville and Davidson County. Mr. Fields?
Last summer, I think it was last summer, or last year anyway, we had contact with some folks that were interested in operating low-speed vehicles in Davidson County. I advised them at the time that we did not have any ordinance that would allow them to be regulated or registered with our office, that if they wanted to be regulated, their options would be the only option they have is to go to the Metropolitan Council. They did go to the council. Councilman Anthony Davis has worked with them, presented a draft ordinance to us. Since Metro Legal and I and others have worked on it and prepared it for your consideration, very much like the pedicab and the pedal carriage issue that you had a couple of weeks back. It's the same sort of a thing where your role is to review, make any comments, suggest any changes, make changes, then would return it back to the councilman for his action.
Have there been any requests to speak on the proposed regulations, Mr. Field?
There are people here that would like to speak. I don't know that they actually fill out the forms, but there are members of the industry here.
If there are members of the public or the industry that would like to speak on these proposed regulations, if you'll please come forward and form a single file line, and we'll limit, I'll ask that you limit your comments to 2 minutes per person if possible, not including any questions we might have, of course. And if you'll please introduce yourself for the record before you begin. Thank you.
Sure. Chris, come up here. Joe Friedman with Joyride Nashville, and Chris Sizemore as well. Low-speed vehicles are basically, for lack of a better term, they're street legal golf carts. It's either electric or gas. The vehicles go less than 25 miles an hour, and it's a category that is very similar to a car, with the addition it's just not a very fast vehicle. And we provide information related to the regulation of what a vehicle would include as far as seat belts, headlights, blinkers, washers. So they're really street legal golf carts, for lack of a better term. It's a pretty wide phenomenon throughout the U.S. where in downtown areas where the taxi services typically wouldn't want to do a short run, because our average run is about 3 or 4 blocks. So we do a fair amount of touring, and like today we have a big group coming in town with about, I don't know how many folks are in town. There are 2,000 people. So they're looking at moving from the Omni to other areas around the downtown area. And it's really the best way to see a city using one of these vehicles. The reason we presented the regulation to the council is because we do want it regulated. We don't want people coming in without disc brakes and drum brakes, coming in without seatbelts, and really giving Nashville a bad name. So we've asked that this particular area be regulated. We work very well with the pedicabs downtown and the pedal taverns. We've got 14 vehicles in Nashville, and we're asking council to regulate our industry so we can, have create a business without potential liability from someone coming in and screwing things up and then shutting it down.
Do your vehicles already comply with the federal standards for low-speed vehicles?
Yes, they all do, and also all of our drivers have F endorsements, so we have a for-hire license.
And so the low-speed vehicles are already regulated by the state laws as well. Or
correct.
You're in compliance with state laws?
100% in compliance with it.
You mentioned that a low-speed vehicle can also be gasoline-powered. These proposed regulations only take into account electric vehicles. Do you have gasoline-powered vehicles as well?
And ours are gas and electric. Our fleet right now, we started with strictly gas. And then we've added 2 electric vehicles to our fleet in the last 60 days. And here's the reason why. The difference between the 2 vehicles, because of the battery life on the electric vehicles, it's not feasible to have a full fleet of them because they're out in about 3 or 4 hours. The electric vehicles only go about 20 miles, and then they have a full night of charging. At some point, the battery technology will improve, and the vehicles will be able to go a full day. But for example, if we're doing a tour for a group, the last thing we want is a vehicle with 4 people to stop midway because it runs out of juice. So that's why we have both to our fleet.
Are you currently just working in the downtown area, or are you working in other areas?
Yes, so basically the suggested area is kind of in the loop, although we do primarily downtown, but we'll also do some 12th South, we do some Germantown, but it's primarily in the loop of downtown Nashville. We also, just to give you, we've had requests from Opryland. Opryland, obviously, for the Christmas holidays is inundated with people, and they've requested for us to put a handful of vehicles just in their parking lot for us to shuffle their customers around.
Do you anticipate working special events too, like the steeplechase?
Correct. We would expect. I'm involved. I own a company called Music City Tent. So we do. That's Chris and I have worked together in the past. That's how I'm an investor in his company, and that's how we basically got started. But we would anticipate a fair amount of special events as well.
Any other questions?
I do have one quick question, and it could be nitpicking a little bit, but according to the regulation, you do have the right to advertise as long as it's approved by the commission. But the city, when groups come to town, will have signs, welcome so-and-so, et cetera, et cetera. I've noticed that all your vehicles right now have the actual MacDon logo. Doesn't say welcome, doesn't say anything. So my concern is that, does MacDon know you have that on your vehicle, and are they okay with it?
Yeah, MacDon, they actually requested that, and that is the group that came to town that actually hired 10 of our vehicles to shuffle their folks around.
And I have no problem with that,
Sure.
but I would like to maybe talk about a scenario in this draft where if we do something like that, that you do have the approval of that group. Because
Absolutely.
there is an implication, if you don't have that they're saying, yes, you can do that.
Sure.
And I just want to make sure that doesn't become a blurred line.
Absolutely. We'd be happy to require that and abide by it.
Okay.
Have you had a chance to review the proposed regulations that are before us?
No, we have not seen it yet.
But don't I understand that your group actually brought a proposal first to?
It's right. Mr. Sizemore actually is the one who approached me at the very beginning, and then I suggested, after several conversations at a meeting, I think, that he work with a council person, and that's where Councilman Davis became involved, and that's where I think that y'all worked with Councilman Davis on the draft, and it came, and we had a meeting, and then.
But we have not seen what came out of that, and that's, I mean, obviously the electric, gas, we would make sure that both of those are in there. So we're in compliance.
I could actually address that, and I apologize. As we were putting it together, we were doing our best to, well, obviously not our best, we were working with what the state definitions were. The state definition actually allows electric or gasoline. So we, and again, as you read that particular section, our goal was to make sure that they're in full compliance with the state. And so either or would meet state standards.
Your vehicles, they're already titled and registered with the local counties?
Correct. Before they go on the street, they are. And just to give you some idea, I mean, the vehicles, they're fairly expensive. The gem cards that we use were about $18,000 each. So it's a significant investment for those vehicles. And obviously there's a lot to do with compliance to make it street legal. So the wipers and, the brakes and all that, it becomes a lot more expensive than a traditional golf cart.
And I use the regulations that came from other cities to put together the regulations for this and then submit it to them, and then they look through it for their approval.
Chris, I apologize. What's your last name?
Sizemore.
Sizemore?
Sizemore, yeah.
Okay. What other cities are you in right now?
None as of yet. Yeah. There's just other regulations in other cities that do the same thing that we do.
And your insurance for the vehicles right now?
We have both.
What is it?
We have a GL 2 million, and then we have a commercial auto for each car.
General liability for $2 million, and then what for each car?
I think it's $100,000 per occurrence per cart. So each one of them are individually insured, just like an automotive car.
I have a question about the rules on alcohol. I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. The way I read letter B under that section is, does it say that nobody with an alcoholic beverage can get on the cart? Or it's 6.73.230.
What's that number again?
6.73.230. Letter B.
It would appear to me that it says that your drivers cannot provide alcoholic beverages. I don't see anything that says that the passenger couldn't get on the vehicle.
I was just, because it says otherwise permits any alcoholic beverages in the LSV.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's your intention?
my assumption, I don't think you can, at this stage, even leave a place with an alcohol beverage and be on the street. So we would abide by that law.
Yeah.
Anybody came with an alcohol beverage, we tell them to put it down like they would do before they came into a bar, and certainly wouldn't allow them to leave with it. So
Okay.
our intention would be to abide by the rules.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get clarification
Sure.
on,
That's fine. We haven't seen the final draft,
Yeah.
so, I mean,
I understand.
Mr. Fields, do you know what the intention was of?
Our intention is that we don't have alcohol in the vehicle.
Okay.
That you would what?
Would not have alcohol in the vehicle.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. You can have a seat.
all right, thanks.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? At this point, we'll close the public hearing and open for deliberation these proposed regulations before the commission. There was one other area that I saw in reviewing the regulations where they weren't exactly consistent with the state regulations on low-speed vehicles. Right now, under Section 6.73, 210, a low-speed vehicle is to only travel on roads with speed limits that do not exceed 35 miles an hour. There's nothing about in the regulations about crossing streets that might have a speed limit in excess of 35 miles an hour, and I know
I think
that
state law allows that.
the state law allows that, but the regulations, these would be more strict than state law. Unless we said you could cross a street that had a higher speed limit.
Yeah, I mean, it's permissible for the commission to be more restrictive than state law. It's not permissible for the commission to be less restrictive than state law. Or actually, I'm sorry, I should say council, because ultimately this will be a council bill, and the commission is just making a recommendation. But you could also conform it to the state law. That would be legally fine as well, or the council could.
So in other words, they could put travel roads with speed limits not to exceed 35 miles an hour and adhere to all state street laws or something like that.
Let me see if I can find it.
Well, I know the state statute, I don't have the citation in front of me, it's in section 55, or chapter 55, but it does state that you are permitted to cross a street that has a higher speed limit.
All right.
Or go through an intersection, for
Yeah,
example.
that's correct. I have seen that as well.
And that's what our anticipation was. If they're on the streets, they have to be on the streets lower than 35. They could obviously cross as long as they're staying on that 35 mile an hour street.
So for clarification, I'd recommend that we amend number 5 there on 210 to allow that travel only roads with speed limits that do not exceed 35 miles per hour, allowing to cross
Or go through an intersection.
of a street that may exceed that speed limit. Kind of thinking and talking at the same time.
Yeah, I suggest we make it consistent with the state law, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it right now.
Well, we could just recommend that it be amended to reflect consistent with the state law when we determine what that is.
That would make sense. They could recommend that to the council, and then they could deal with that.
Yes.
So a possible amendment would be to suggest that it be amended to comply with state.
With the state law on that specific provision about not to travel on a road that exceeds the speed limit of 35 except to go through an intersection.
Right. I mean, it would have to comply with the other provisions within the ordinance regarding locations where they can drive. We've said that there will be special zones that will be designated within which they can operate and outside of which they cannot operate. And so, whatever those locations were, I don't know if they would require, I guess they're to be determined. It's possible that they might or might not require crossing roads that exceed the speed of 35 miles per hour, but I think those two provisions could be consistent with each other.
Do I understand that eventually we may be asked to set up zones for these low-speed vehicles?
Yes.
Zones of
Similar to like the
operations?
horse-drawn carriages where they have
Okay.
zones. Yeah.
On that same line, Mr. Fields, have you had input from Metro Police or Public Works or convention visitors?
We had general conversations. The Metro Police Department has reviewed it and made some suggestions to it as well. I'm sorry?
That's correct.
I don't think there was an endorsement or not an endorsement, but they didn't express any concerns
Okay.
other than making sure that we had the rules in place that would regulate.
Okay. And same with Public Works?
I get we had general conversations with traffic and parking, since they're not involved in the use of any public, for any public parking, it's like we have taxi cab stands, they would have to abide by whatever the loading and unloading passenger is.
So we have stands for the horse-drawn carriages and for cabs, but for the pedicabs, the pedal taverns, and now for the low-speed vehicles, they will not have stands.
Correct.
But they can be hailed by pedestrians?
The pedal tavern cannot, the pedicab can, and I'm trying to,
The LSV can.
and I think the LSV can as well.
All right. That's right. The pedal tavern said that they were only by contract or by reservation.
Correct.
It'd be hard for one person to find another pedal.
But if you saw an empty seat,
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Jump on it.
hey, can I join you?
I wanted to make sure that the commissioners also took notice of section 6.73.03, 070 regarding insurance. Make sure that we believe that the amount of insurance required that we were satisfied with that provision. I'm not suggesting it's not enough or too much. I wanted to make sure it was consistent with what we had been requiring for other types of vehicles.
Well, it's below what we require for cabs.
In this particular ordinance, we're actually recommending that there's comprehensive public liability and general insurance of $1 million and comprehensive auto liability of $1 million occurrence. So they're currently, taxi cabs are $5,150, and then we'll be going higher later. In the ordinance that you just recommended to the Metro Council, we also had $1 million as a part of the pedal tavern and the pedicab, or the pedal carriage.
What'd they say they had a...
$2 million?
Well, they said they had a 100,000 per occurrence.
Per occurrence, yeah.
The general was what, $2 million?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I recognize it, and you should have done that. My apologies.
Mr. Sizemore, do you have a comment?
I do. The insurance company that we had our insurance through no longer exists, so the policy that we can get is only $100,000 per occurrence. It's the only company out there that will insure an LSV in our industry.
How many people can be carried in one of your vehicles?
5 plus the driver.
So you got 6.
Correct.
And what did you say your general liability was?
$2 million.
Two.
Yeah, let me just reiterate, we would like more insurance. We've also talked about gathering, they've got probably about 10 other companies like us throughout the U.S. and creating a captive insurance. We work with I forgot the name of it. There's a couple companies here that do that. So we're in talks with them, but we need to form an association, and it's going to take us some time to do it. We obviously we understand that $100,000 is not a lot of insurance, but that's all the insurance company will write, because it's a new industry. I mean, this industry, we're a year old. So it's just a new industry, and they just don't have enough actuaries. They don't have enough history to know. We have not had any issues. And we do intend to increase our insurance as soon as we can. And worst case scenario, we're going to self-insure. With, we would have a $200,000 low line, and then we'd self-insure for the rest of it. We just need the group to get together.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Do you guys mind if I make a comment just as a member of the public? I know the hearing is closed now.
I'm sorry, the hearing's closed.
All right.
I would tend to agree 100,000 per occurrence is rather low if it can hold up to 6 passengers.
Yeah, you have a car that goes through an intersection and doesn't see one of these low-speed vehicles going through and wipes out several of the people in there. You're going to be well over that. Or even if they have very serious injuries. But what's proposed here, though, is $1 million per occurrence, right?
Right.
I say we leave it and let them get into compliance. It's not for us to try to fix their inability to get insurance. It's for us to make sure we protect people who are in these vehicles.
All right, it looks like we have 2 areas that are pretty non-controversial suggestions to make sure that in the definition of low-speed vehicles, we include gasoline-powered vehicles, and also under the section governing the prohibition on traveling in roads with speed limits that do not exceed 35 miles an hour, to clarify that a low-speed vehicle may go through an intersection for another street that might have a speed limit greater than 35.
In the interim, Ms. Ladd was able to locate that statutory section, which is TCA 558191, and it says this subdivision does not prohibit a low-speed vehicle from crossing a road or street in an intersection where the road or street has posted a speed limit of more than 35 miles per hour.
Thank you, Ms. Costanzo.
So we could cite that in...
Or just repeat the language.
Okay.
I believe those were the only suggestions that we had as a commission so far. Any others?
I just want to clarify, how does, on 673070, how does that compare to the limits that we just passed for the pedal taverns and the pedicabs?
It's identical.
So this is identical to what we just passed on those.
I think that's correct. I think with pedal carriages and pedicabs, we used the language from the horse-drawn carriage insurance requirement.
But we also gave you the...
Which is $1 million.
Okay.
But that wouldn't have auto, though.
Correct. But from a limit standpoint, I think it's the same limit on the pedal cab and pedal carriage.
Yeah, that wouldn't have auto, though.
Correct.
So on those, we had comprehensive general liability and property damage, $1 million per occurrence, but we didn't have any requirement related to automobile because they weren't considered automobiles.
Let me look at what we have in the horse-drawn carriage, because I'm pretty sure we mirrored that.
Give me those sections where the gas and the across the sections.
558191. It's right.
Oh,
They're all
yeah.
on the same page.
No, I mean, the section here.
Oh, sorry.
210.
Yeah.
And that's 5 in there.
the definition section.
They do have a 1 million per carriage for liability. So it doesn't have the word auto in it, but there is an equivalent type of insurance that I guess we use for the pedicabs and the horse-drawn carriages.
So obviously for them, we don't require automobile liability because they're not automobiles.
But it's per vehicle,
It's per vehicle,
occurrence.
per occurrence.
Yeah. And Mr. Cobb did review and weigh in on this
Okay.
section. And I may need to add a clarification in terms of it being identical to what the other two had. I think it's not identical in that the underinsured, uninsured was
Correct.
something that we added here that we
Yes,
did not
that
add,
is true.
and that is not the case in pedicabs and horse-drawn carriages. This is kind of a strange mix, I guess. You know, it's kind of halfway between the cars and those other types of vehicles. And so we were kind of leaning on the side, I think, of treating it a little more like a car.
More like a car.
Between the motorized and the non-motorized, that was a debate that we had, certainly.
What are the soon-to-be limits for taxi cabs?
On March the 1st, they would go to 100, 350. Currently, they're 50, 150.
I mean, another thought that was perhaps mentioned by Mr. Cobb, maybe more in the livery context. The 1 million coverage, I think, also had to do with the fact that a lot of these companies have fleets. Like in the livery context, a lot of them will have a fleet. And I assume that's true with the low-speed vehicles as well, that they have several vehicles, multiple vehicles that are covered under one policy, as opposed to the cab drivers often carry their own insurance. Right. So that may be a distinction as well. I'm not as knowledgeable about it as Mr. Cobb is, but I remember that coming up in the discussion.
Well, I can certainly understand how a $1 million on occurrence basis minimum could be cost prohibitive. You know, these low-speed vehicles, the maximum number of passengers they can hold are 6. Is that correct?
We've allowed up to 7 based on the standards that we saw,
So including the driver?
including the driver.
Concern is the low-speed vehicles don't provide as much protection for the occupants as does a cab or limousine.
Right. It's more like a motorcycle.
And I doubt they have airbags or significant metal on the sides.
certainly seems like it makes sense to leave it in place. Certainly the proposed regulations that are coming from Councilperson Mr. Davis have considered the dollar amount at hand on the insurance. I understand from Mr. Sizemore that right now the industry is in such a nascent state that that level of insurance may not be available at this point, but I imagine it will soon.
Do I understand correctly that we're making a recommendation on this to the council, and the council still may change it if they do a fact-finding and determine that it's would cause the LSVs to be out of business?
You could actually change in a couple of ways. The councilman himself could make whatever change he wanted to make prior to the introduction. In other words, he could say, I like this, I'm not sure why we have this, and then introduce it to the council. And then once it's at the council, then they would have the right, any of the councilmen at that particular point would have the right to amend in whatever way they felt, and it'd be up to the council to decide.
Up until it's on second reading.
Mm-hmm.
So if Mr. Friedman and Mr. Sizemore lobby Mr. Davis, he could change it before he proposes it to the council.
Mm-hmm.
Well, certainly there are lower limits, $500,000, $750,000, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Are we ready for a motion on the two areas that we're kind of in agreement on?
I think so.
Okay. I'd make a motion that section 6.73.210, subsection 5, which deals with the roads that the low-speed vehicles may travel, limiting it to 35 miles per hour, be amended to be consistent with Tennessee Code annotated section 55-8-191, allowing the LSVs to travel through intersections where the cross street may exceed the speed limit of 35 miles per hour. And I would go on to make a motion, or to include in that motion, that section 6.73.010 that defines the low-speed vehicles include electric or gas vehicles.
I'll second that.
All those in favor of making those suggestions to the proposed regulations?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Those suggestions will be made to the council.
Now we entertain a motion on the overall recommendation.
Make a motion that with those previous two suggestions, that the overall ordinance be recommended to the Metro Council.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Fields, is there any other business? I understand you've sent around some proposed dates for next year's meetings.
I would like for you to consider our meeting dates next year. I think they're all on the normal fourth Thursday, with a couple of exceptions that interfered with a holiday or two. But of January 22nd for the regular meeting, plus a public hearing on taxi cab certificate requests and permits, with a deadline of December 12th for any application. And when I say 12, it'd be at 4 o'clock on that day. February 26th, March 26th, April 23rd, May 28th, June 25th. That meeting, I would ask that would be the annual public meeting on emergency record zones, with May 22nd at 4 p.m. as the filing deadline, then July 23rd, August 27th, September 17th, October 22nd, November 19th, and then if necessary, a meeting in December on December the 10th.
Mr. McNally mentioned to me that January 22nd is a conflict for him. Are there any other dates that conflict with other commission members?
Not at this point.
Would it be possible to move the 22nd meeting to the 21st or the 20th, the Tuesday or Wednesday?
In terms of it just be about availability, it's possible if you would be interested in moving it a week to the, if you went to the next week, that would actually be the 5th Thursday. That would put us in a place we could, because that particular meeting might need additional space, we could probably go to it's possible we go to the Howard Building, the Sunny West Building, and then get the entire room, because there shouldn't be anything reserved on the 5th Thursday, I wouldn't think. We could certainly approach that. If not, we'd have to find the availability, but we will find a place to meet if you need to move the meeting, whether it's the 21st, the 20th, 21st, or whatever date you choose. We'll find a meeting space.
I'm wide open the 29th, and I would really like to attend the taxi cab certificate meeting. I'm scheduled to be out of town on the 22nd for reasons.
It's okay with me.
It's fine with me.
Thank you, folks.
And I'm hoping we can still leave the deadline of December the 12th for the, it still gives adequate time, I believe. It gives next week and then 2 weeks after that for anybody that wants to apply.
I think that's more than enough time.
Do we need to make a motion on that, or is it just?
I think you just accept the calendar. I mean, I don't think they have to make a motion, but if they wanted, they certainly could.
They don't take action unless they make a motion, but probably the chair and/or Mr. Fields can do this without.
I think these meeting minutes or meeting dates are fine with the change of moving the January 22nd meeting to the 29th.
Okay.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.